Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs. Huge shout out to my dogs. Welcome back to another video. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about something that I am very delighted to be discussing. And it all starts with a story.
Daniel from the future here eating my pizza. Is the audio weird? I feel like the audio is weird. Sorry about that. My fault. I'll do better. Back to the video.
In 1986, Ed Catmull was sitting across the table from none other than Steve Jobs. Ed Catmull at the time, he was the owner of Pixar Animation Studios. And it was owned by Lucasfilms. And if you don't know Lucasfilms, they made Star Wars. So again, we're back at the scene. Steve Jobs is talking to Ed Catmull and talking with the lawyers. And there's a deal happening. Steve Jobs is buying Pixar. I don't know if you know this. I didn't know this. Pixar was bought by Steve Jobs. I had no idea. For $5 million. And this is where it all began for Pixar. You know, Pixar, the people that made this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, they made and they still make fantastic movies. But how did they get there? After many, many years of trial and error and anticipating the unseen forces that stopped creativity, Ed Catmull, the president of Pixar Animation Studios, he ended up writing this book, Creativity Inc. Today we're going to be talking about it. We're going to talk about the different things that I found interesting. I front to cover this book. This is the expanded edition. Let me tell you what, the expanded edition is long. It was like 450 pages, and I was like, this is a book on creativity? You kidding me? No, it was a book on creative management. So yes, it is creativity, but it's also a little bit of creative management. So if you're leading a team, this video is for you. If you're not leading a team, and you're like me, a schmuck, creating your own content, doing your own thing, this video is still for you. What is it that Pixar faced that many of us maybe face, maybe don't face, maybe some of us will face? It's the failure of success, the problem of success. And I'll give you an example from my own YouTube channel. It's getting a little meta, so you'll have to bear with me. I posted a video, which is here, you can see, and it got 600 and however many views right now. And I thought to myself, this is fame. I thought, wow, I've made it. And what happens is that you always want to try to hit that bar. It's the same thing for Pixar. I'm not trying to equate myself to Pixar, but you know what I mean. You create something that you're extraordinarily proud of, and it's very well received by the people around you. And then you have this pressure to kind of perform and do the exact same thing again. And that's what Pixar faces as well. How do we manage the pressure to perform in light of the success that we have encountered? And the way that Pixar has managed this is that they always encourage their managers and the people that work for them to take risks. And I don't mean just taking any sort of risk. It's calculated risk. It's this give and take. You have to be willing to do the thing that you know is going to be successful, but also you need to innovate, you need to iterate, you need to come up with new ideas and new approaches to challenging problems. And the way that Pixar does it is they let their team explore. They let them make the mistakes on a smaller scale before they scale up to $1 million mistakes. Most of us have the luxury of not making $1 million mistakes, but that's Pixar, and we're not Pixar. But Ed Catmull, he's Pixar. What the heck am I saying? So that's the first point that I found really interesting about this book, is that they manage this tension of being very successful and yet still being willing to take risks. The next thing that I found really fascinating about this book, I'm just holding this pen now. Haha! I'm being a little too dramatic. Being too dramatic in these videos. The second thing that I found super interesting about Creativity Inc., this book, which you can also get in the link below, is that they protected their creative culture at all costs. And one of the ways that they safeguarded their culture, and this applies whether it's personal creativity or managerial creativity, is that you have to develop a culture of candor. And candor is just kind of a different way of saying honesty. The reason they don't use honesty is because honesty oftentimes is conflated to be a little bit more into morality, but they want it to be less moral and more objective. But the necessity to safeguard your creative culture is of the utmost importance. And one of the ways that they do this is they recognize the patterns that very well could become big problems. Ed Catmull, he's actually a brilliant guy. He's got his PhD in, I think, computer science, but he's also like a math nerd, you know what I mean? You love those creatives that are like math nerds, but they're also like really right brain, left brain. Comment below, is it right brain that's creative or left brain that's creative? I can't remember. You know though, you're a smart, intelligent cookie. You're more than a cookie. Just wanted to tell you that. Ed Catmull, he borrowed this mathematic term called stochastic self-similarity, which is just a fancy way of saying small things often look like big things if you expand them. So the example he uses that I think is brilliant, that I'm going to use here, is that imagine if you get a branch from a tree. If you break it off and you stick it in the ground, it kind of looks like a tiny tree. It's addressing those small things before they become big things. I hope that makes sense. And it's the same for our life. If we're murmuring about how we're not good enough, or if we're letting certain corners be cut that we know we could put more effort into, that eventually is going to compound into a much larger issue. So to safeguard your creative culture or the creative culture of the team that you're looking after, make sure to address the small things before they become big things.
We interrupt this program to bring you a pressing story.
Brief intermission from yours truly. I don't know why I'm grabbing the mic. I'm like, don't go anywhere. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. If you're having a laugh, if you're learning a thing or two about Pixar and Creativity Inc., feel free to subscribe. It helps me tremendously, and I will continue to do everything I can to make videos that are enjoyable for you, that you learn something, that you have a laugh, and you feel like we're connecting, feel like we're growing a little bit closer, you know what I mean? Anyways, back to the video. The final aspect of Creativity Inc., link below again. No, I'm just kidding. The final aspect of Creativity Inc. that I really enjoyed is this idea called the IKEA Effect. This is what they talk about, and this is where I'm going to land the plane. The IKEA Effect is when you spend an inordinate amount of time working on something, or the example they give is building something from IKEA, and you have a kind of sentimental connection to it. This is another one of those ways that inhibits you from branching out and trying a different form. There will eventually be a day where I get a backdrop, where I get a better light than my freaking lamp, you know what I mean? Or there'll be a day where I get a better camera or things like that. But I'm going to miss the days where it's simple and it's on my iPhone. And the same can be true with Pixar. The IKEA Effect is that they had these systems of animation that they didn't want to move on from because they knew them very well, and to learn the other systems was going to take time. And what happens is that we put an inappropriate amount of value on things that we have dedicated a lot of time to. And this is really what stops people from, again, iterating and coming up with new ideas, is that we are so committed, we are so stuck in our ways that we are unwilling to move. We're unwilling to go the next step. And so how do you solve this problem? How do you really take the leap into a different domain or a different method, a different approach? The only way you do it is by recognizing the sentimental value that you have with the methods that you use. For example, if you're an artist and you draw a certain way, there's going to be certain tools that you use to get you to the drawings that you want. But eventually, in order to grow your repertoire and your skill set, you have to branch off. And that branching off is intimidating. It's kind of like the business saying, you have to be willing to step over pennies to pick up dollars, but you still are stepping over pennies. And you have to reckon with those challenges. And you have to go, okay, I know this is for the greater good. I know that I built this IKEA set, but I want to get some Danish fancy thing. I'm using a Danish thing because my wife just picked one up this afternoon, so there's that free one for you. But any which way you slice it, Pixar is an unbelievable company, and they did not get there by accident. Much like us, Pixar was willing to take risks and leaps, and they were lucky. And if we're so lucky, hopefully we choose to give back as well.
Daniel from the future again. Can you believe this? Forgot to do an outro. Didn't do a whole thing where I go, thanks so much for watching. If you want to click this video or that video, so I'm just going to do it here. Feel free to click this video or that video, and I will see you next week. Bye.